Hello and welcome to another TLDR US video. We've been concentrating a lot lately on the presidential race, and with good reason, but we thought now would be a good time to shift our attention to Congress. With all the hype surrounding Trump and Biden, it can be easy to overlook the fact that congressional elections are also taking place concurrently with the presidential elections. So, in this video, we're going to be taking a look at some of the tight races going into the congressional elections, and the impact they could have on the presidential election, or vice versa. If you haven't already, please be sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon to be notified when we post. Also, if you want to support the channel, please consider signing up to our Patreon. We've just announced a whole new bunch of perks, including early access to videos, behind the scenes posts, seeing your name and likeness in videos, as well as new live events. We're even holding a Patreon exclusive live quiz this Sunday, where everyone who beats me wins a TLDR prize. There's a link to the Patreon down below. Before we get into specific races and members who are most likely to lose their seats, it's important to understand the difference between the two houses. The House of Representatives has 435 members, who only serve 2-year terms, which means that the full House of Representatives is up for re-election in November. As there are 435 members, we don't really have time to cover all of those, maybe in a new feature-length video. So what we'll say is watch who has control of the House at the end of election night, presuming we even know the result on election night. With the moves towards mail-in voting, we may not know who has a majority for several days or weeks after election day. The point is though, if Democrats retain the majority and President Trump is elected, this could pose a problem for him and his second-term agenda, which a Democratic House could broadly block. And of course, the same problem will be presented for Joe Biden, should he win and the Republicans take control of the House. The Senate, on the other hand, is a bit of a different animal. As senators serve 6-year terms, the 100-member body is staggered across election cycles. This year, 34 senators are up for re-election, with one special election in the state of Georgia after the retirement of Johnny Isakson for health reasons at the end of 2019. However, these 34 Senate seats aren't spread evenly by party, with 23 Republicans facing re-election and only 10 Democrats. Considering the Republicans currently hold a majority in the Senate, it's clearly their game to lose at this point. So let's take a look at some specific races. According to 270 to Win, 18 of the Senate races are not considered safe for their incumbent party. So essentially, the incumbent is at risk of losing the race. However, at the time of writing, 10 of those 18, despite being risky, are expected to still be retained by the incumbent party, which leaves 8 that are most at risk. So let's take a look at these 8 very competitive races and work out which ones could flip and how that would impact the political math. Democrat Doug Jones won his election to Senate in a 2017 special election against former Alabama Supreme Court Justice Roy Moore. Now, we have to admit that Jones's win here was probably a fluke. Alabama is a pretty Republican state, but Jones won his victory after several women accused Moore of sexual assault. That, on top of other controversial remarks regarding race and religion that Moore had made previously. This time around, former Auburn University football coach Tommy Tuberville is trying to win the seat back for the GOP. And given that President Trump won the state by over 27 points, I think we can most likely count this seat in the Republican column. But stranger things have happened. Martha McSally first ran in the 2018 midterms, but after losing that race, McSally was tapped to fill the seat of the late John McCain. Now, McSally is now running again in 2020 in order to win her full term. However, she faces stiff competition from former astronaut Mark Kelly, who's also the husband of former Congresswoman Gabby Giffords. Giffords, you may recall, was severely wounded in the shooting in Tucson, Arizona in 2011. Kelly has been consistently increasing in the polls, which is certainly a worrying sign for the Republicans. However, McSally does have one thing going for her. She's running in a presidential cycle where turnout is usually higher. On the other hand, while Arizona usually goes for Republicans in presidential elections, the margin in 2016 was quite slim at 3.5%. So this race really is a toss-up. Colorado Senator Cory Gardner is perceived as one of the most vulnerable Republican senators. probably because Hillary Clinton carried the state in 2016 by just under 5 points. Garner was elected in the midterm election of 2014, in which the Republicans took back control of the Senate. This time he'll face off against former Colorado Governor John Hickenlooper, who sought the Democratic nomination for president and then announced his candidacy for Senate after suspending his presidential bid. Hickenlooper had some problems during his campaign stemming from ethics violations during his time as governor. However, according to 538, Hickenlooper still maintains a 9-point lead over Gardner. While this certainly isn't as good as the 18-point lead he held in May, let's be honest, the Democrats are still in a good position. Georgia has a bit of a different circumstance this time round, as both Senate seats are up for re-election this year. Now, I know we didn't mention Kelly Loeffler as one of the competitive races, as it's rated as leaning Republican by 270 to win. However, as the state is so competitive in the presidential election, as well as the other Senate seat, we figured that it wouldn't hurt to take a look at this race too. When Senator Johnny Isakson announced his retirement in 2019, Kelly Loeffler was appointed to fill the seat. After taking office in January, it didn't take long for Loeffler to be caught up in controversy. She, along with North Carolina Republican Richard Burr and California Democrat Dianne Feinstein, were accused of shady stock transactions after receiving a private briefing on the coronavirus pandemic. To be fair to Loeffler, however, an investigation by the Senate Ethics Committee found no wrongdoing by Loeffler. Her race to keep the Senate seat was further complicated by the fact it's a jungle election. As such, 4 candidates will face off in November, with a runoff to take place on January 5th if no candidate receives a majority. The other Georgia Senate seat belongs to Senator David Perdue, who's facing a tough re-election bid against Democrat Jon Ossoff. 538 shows Ossoff leading Perdue by a slim 2 points. However, the Republicans have dumped over $11 million into the state, hoping to hold on to the seat, with another nearly $14 million expected through September and October. This sheer volume of cash being spent should tell you how much the Republicans need to keep hold of this seat in order to retain their slim majority in the Senate. Joni Ernst of Iowa is another vulnerable senator. A first-term senator, Ernst is facing off against Democratic real estate executive Teresa Greenfield. While Greenfield has been more successful at fundraising than Ernst, the race is still quite competitive. Ernst raised eyebrows when she was skeptical about the number of deaths due to COVID-19, saying that healthcare providers were reimbursed at a higher rate if COVID was involved. To be fair to Ernst though, the higher reimbursement is a true statement. Medicare does offer a 20% increase for COVID-related deaths. However, public health experts believe that the actual count of COVID deaths is probably much higher than what's currently known. At any rate, Ernst's re-election won't be easy, although again, she does have the advantage of running during a presidential election in a state that Donald Trump carried by nearly 10 points. Susan Collins is facing a tough challenge from Speaker of the Maine House of Representatives, Sara Gideon. Collins is probably the most centrist Republican senator, who gained a lot of criticism for her vote in favour of confirming Brett Kavanaugh to the Supreme Court, despite the claims of sexual misconduct levied against him. We've talked about senators running in states that Trump won, and how they might have an advantage with this being a presidential election year. However, Collins doesn't have that advantage, as Hillary Clinton carried the state of Maine by 3 points. That said, it's worth noting that Collins won her last election in 2014 by 37 points. But if recent polling trends are any indication, Collins could be in trouble. The Real Clear Politics average has Gideon leading Collins by roughly 5 points. Montana is one of the most interesting races, because not only did Trump win the state by over 20 points, but popular Democratic Governor Steve Bullock is now challenging Republican Steve Daines. Now, Daines currently holds a 2-point lead over Bullock in the Real Clear Politics average, but as we pointed out, it's still very early. The last senator on our list is Thom Tillis of North Carolina, a state that Donald Trump carried in 2016 by 3.5 points. The story here is similar to other Republican incumbents that we've talked about. Tillis is about 2 points behind his opponent, North Carolina State Senator Cal Cunningham, and has also been outperformed in fundraising. Tillis only won his re-election in 2014 by 2 points, so this will certainly be a race to watch. You may be wondering why we've continuously mentioned how Donald Trump did in these states in 2016. Well, it's because these numbers could give us a clue as to how these senators will fare. If support for Trump has not eroded over the last 4 years, it may give vulnerable Republicans the chance they need to keep their seats. So, what's pretty clear when you look through these 8 competitive seats is how close this could end up being. The Republicans currently hold a slim majority of 53 to the Democrats' 45, although the 2 independents do both caucus with the Democrats. With such a small margin, it's easy to see how some races falling against the Republican incumbents could flip the Senate. It certainly wouldn't be easy for the Democrats to win the Senate, but it's certainly not impossible with enough momentum behind them. What do you think though? Will Republicans keep control of the upper chamber and take control of the House of Representatives? Or will Democrats retain their House majority and take back control of the Senate? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon to be notified every time we release a video. Special thanks to our Patreon backers who make videos like this one possible. And if you want to see your name listed at the end of the videos, then be sure to back us on Patreon. There's a link to that in the description.